Welcome back. Now we're going to move to some internal male reproductive organs. So we're going to start looking at the posterior aspect of the urinary bladder. As you recall, in our pathway, we left off with our vas deferens coming alongside the side of the urinary bladder and then traveling medially. I want to point out that these other tubular structures, those are the tubes that go into the urinary bladder, also known as your ureters. So don't get confused between the two. So those are the two vas deferens. If we look just lateral to the vas deferens on each side, there is a huge organ. Well, okay, it's not huge, but it's quite a bit larger than most people think. It's about the size of your pinky finger on each side of this. And this is the seminal vesicle, which is where a lot of the semen comes from. So you always can tell the seminal vesicle because it is lateral to the vas deferens. Now the vas deferens, this last part of it kind of has this ampullary area. So when it's cut open, it looks similar to the seminal vesicle, but they're two distinct organs. The next organ is just inferior to the urinary bladder. It's about the size of a walnut. It's this gland right here, which is pointed out in all four models, being just inferior to the urinary bladder. And this is known as the prostate gland. Now, a lot of students like to misspell this as prostrate because they've heard that word. That word means you're lying on your stomach, okay? This is prostate, like the 50 United States, the prostate gland. And so the prostate gland is just inferior to the urinary bladder. So it's where the first part of the male urethra goes. So if we look at the lower left picture, because it's up close, this is the urinary bladder. And this slightly purplish gland, this is the prostate gland. You can see the urethra exiting from the trigone in the urinary bladder. And so the section of the urethra where the red star is on this one, that's inside the prostate gland, that's called the prostatic urethra. And so you clearly can see it in the left lower quadrant because this pinkish organ right there is the prostate gland, and so this is the prostatic urethra. Just pointing out, urinary bladder on this model, this is vas deferens on the model, and this is the seminal vesicle on the model. And then we have a tissue picture in the right upper quadrant where you have kind of a deflated urinary bladder, but you can see the prostate with its prostatic urethra clearly. But there is another tubular structure in the prostate gland, and this is the ejaculatory duct. So on models, it tends to look partly going through the prostate gland because it comes in at an angle. And so when they take the cut to show the entire prostatic urethra, you're not at the same angle as seeing the entire ejaculatory duct. And here's what the ejaculatory duct is. We had the vas deferens coming in and the seminal vesicle coming in. And what happens is both of those openings fuse into this duct. So if we look in the right lower quadrant, there's the vas deferens coming down, there's the seminal vesicle, and they share the same duct that travels through the prostate gland called the ejaculatory duct. And the ejaculatory duct empties into that prostatic urethra. And from that point on, it's going to be the same pathway for urine and for semen, albeit never at the same time, physiologically impossible. So continuing on below the prostate gland, we have a piece of the urethra that sits in the pelvic diaphragm where all that muscle is, where you see levator ani muscle and other unnamed muscles are. And this very short, half a centimeter section of the urethra is called the membranous urethra. And so you're looking just below the prostate gland and above the penis. in this area where the membranous urethra is, just on the side of the membranous urethra, there is a little tiny gland. And so looking at that same model, it's this one over here, which has like the number 5. And this drawing in the upper left quadrant is this green structure. So this pink, that's the muscle diaphragm, the pelvic diaphragm. You clearly can see the prostatic urethra being joined by the ejaculatory duct, then becoming the membranous urethra, and then, and then the duct from this little gland entering that. So this gland has 2 different names. The easier name to spell is Cowper's gland. But traditionally, we've been trying to get rid of people's names and being given names to structures that let you know where they are. And so the other name for this is the bulbourethral gland. And the reason for that is it sits between the membranous urethra and this structure right here, this bluish structure on both of these, all 4 of these pictures. And that area is known as the bulb of the penis. So it sits between the bulb of the penis and the urethra in that pelvic diaphragm area, the bulbourethral or Cowper's gland. And with that, we're done with the internal organs and we are ready to move external again. So I'll see you shortly.